Well, this is Baruch Fleischman here. I'm at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, and I wanted to show you that we're learning the typical bundles of the Shara Kavanos, and we're learning about Kriat Shemah. So what's happened is, with me, is that I got but I got a look at the Shara Kavanos from Rabbi Mimran, and then I got deeper into it, and I started to see that there's a lot of things missing. It's not really possible to understand what's going on in the Kavanos, particularly in the Rishash Siddur, if you don't have a background. And so I'm inviting you to come and learn with me. I am the lift manager here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, and it's my desire to try to learn as much of this secret information as possible. It's not that it's actually secret. It really needs to be brought out. But it's not developed particularly in the Western world, in the world that we live in. I want to go back to page Kaf Dalet here and read across the top and get us into the flow of what's going on with the Rav is saying. These are the words of the ARI Kriat as written down by the Marchul. So he had written like this, that in the morning prayers, the zivug that takes place then between male and female, that is the whole concept here of the davening, is to bring unity between opposite forces, which are depicted by the simple concept of male and female. Could also be black and white, up and down, and all different kinds of things that are opposite, that are really, their origin is in oneness. And our job is really to bring that oneness together. Now, in order to make a Yichud, you have to be face to face. So let's see if I can understand this. V'lachein yesh bo nefilas apayim. So therefore, when you have this Yichud, therefore he says you have this nefilas apayim. V'gam Kriat Shemah, and also at the same time you have nefilas apayim, which is tachnon, and you have also Kriat Shemah. V'kavanas osach of a Kriat Shemah. So the kavanah that you should have when you're going to say the Kriat Shemah in the morning, the Yachid as Abba Ve'ima, is in order to be able to produce enough Mayim Nukvin that's coming from the bottom of your prayers to cause the Shef to go up to the Most High and come down through Abba Ve'ima to directly affect the male and female opposite aspects. Yichud Ma'ula, the very high level of Yichud, Ma'od Kadei Sheyam Shech Misham, so that you be able to pull down down from there the shefa, that is the moch and the godless, yachdu azah v'nuk panim b'panim, which we call zachar v'nuk, to go face and face. Now, I could have had a question there about what he meant about the yichud ma'ula, but I'm going to go on to it because I see he didn't comment on it. So now we're going to go to the next page, and we're going to see what's over here and try to keep learning along and understanding what the details are of these different times. So the mincha, now at mincha time, he says, Oz hazivug hu bebechinis ach ba'ach. Then the yichud takes place. It's a different kind of yichud. We have to understand what this is. And when we say that the yichud ma'ula actually takes place when they're facing each other, here's another kind of yichud, which is called the Yichud of Ach Ba'ach. And this is a little bit more secret. How do you do this? Now we learn that when we talk about day and night, we're talking about the concept of what's called Kad Shaus, is 24 hours. And those 24 hours are divided into 4 different periods. Because the day actually begins on 2 different times, which are the 2 halves. Also the night. In other words, there's a chatzos. We'll look at the notes. I guess he means there's a chatzos and there's a midday. So also the night could be divided into 2 times 2. So the control, that is the depth, we'll find out what he means by memshalas, but the control of the upper world in these different times is different. That is, I guess it means the shafa and what's going on. Because after the second half of the day, that means in midday, noon, begins to start the gevuros of Yitzchak. So let's go over and see what the Tiva Kavonis has to tell us here to try to help us to understand. So this is going on the phrase of B'mintcha az a zivug hu b'bechinas ach ba'ach. Now what is a zivug ach da'ach? Now how is it possible to have the two yisodos go together if their backs are to each other? But the fetus of Mincha hazivug dezer anpin b'nok, so that yichud that takes place at Mincha time, hu b'bechinas ach ba'ach. Now what does it mean, a bechina of ach ba'ach? Perusha sherachol omedes ach ba'ach in zer anpin, that the normal position of zer anpin in the nukva, when they're not receiving mochin the godless, is that their backs face each other. Amna mazivuk hu Leah im Yisroel b'panim b'panim. The yichud that takes place between Leah and Yisroel is face to face. V'kach pirshu chsidurichem b'kubalim. Now that really takes a little bit of understanding as far as I'm concerned. Let's look down here in the Shar Shefa Kavanos and see if I could get some more information on that. He says, "Uvamitcha oza zivuk hu b'bechinas ach ba'ach." Aval lefi derek haRishash, but according to the way that the Rishash learns, haseder hu shebemitcha naasa zivuk Yaakov v'Rachel, in the morning, the yichud takes place between Yaakov and Rachel. Now Yaakov and Rachel are not partial, but they're I guess you would say partsufim surrounding Zer Anpin and Malchus. Because Yaakov is located from the chest of Zer Anpin and Lamata, and Rachel is located from the chest of Zer Anpin and Lamata. So each of them, that is on the back. One is on the front, it's going to be Yaakov's on the front, and she is on the back. The Keilim emseim panim b'panim, with middle, that is their middle Keilim, because there's 3 Keilim to each, and they're panim b'panim. So it says Srichim, so therefore it's necessary the Farish Kavanas Arab Masha Amish B'Minchu Hu Zivug Da'ach Ba'ach. So he says, first of all, this part is saying something like this. And I'm not that familiar with it, and I'm sorry, but I'm trying to learn this. So he says, according to the Rishas, in Mincha time, the Yichud does place between Zachar and Nokh, that is Yaakov and Rachel. And we have to understand once again, Yaakov is from the Chaz of Lamata, and Rachel is that is on the front of Zer Anpin, and Rachel is from the Chaz of Lamata on the back of Zer Anpin. When these two, that they are 2 separate parts of him, when they come together, that's what happens during the weekdays. But the yichud that takes place at Mincha time is the Keilim emseim panim b'panim. It's the middle Keilim. Now that's difficult for me to understand. So then if that's what takes place according to the Rishash, then what is it that the Rav is saying? Because he said the kavanas of the Rav is Masha Ambasha b'Mincha hu zivug da'ach ba'ach. Ach ba'ach means that their backs are to each other, not that they're facing each other, and that there's a middle part of them that is somehow making this yichud. That's what the Rishash says. So is Pirusha Kusha Zivug the Yaakov Rachel the Keilim Emseim the Kroim Zivug the Akba'ach. And so the answer, simple answer would be that that's a substitute name. That the yichud that takes place between the Keilim Emseim of Yaakov and Rachel is the same thing as saying as a Zivug of Akba'ach. Ba'archin Lagabe Keilim Abenimim. Now you would say this is Akba'ach if you say that it's different between the yichud that takes place with the Keilim Penimim. Keilim is Keilim Penimim. Because the Keilim Penimim is the most ikar part of the yichud, and as a result of that, anything compared to it would not be Penimi, but it would be Ach. Become after the farce, the Shitas or Shachazivug Na'asa B'Keilim Penimim, but then we could also say that you want to say another way, that the Keilim, actually the yichud takes place between the Keilim Penimim, B'Mincha, B'Mincha hu Yisroel im Leah. But you could also say that it's another set. It's Yisroel, which means Yisroel is a partzuf that's from the Chaza Olamala of Zer Anpin. That's the upper part of Zer Anpin. And with Leah, who is basically from that same place, but on the back of Zer Anpin. So that's another possibility of a way to say that it's a yichud ach ba'ach. Let's have a nimsa sh'rochel shel Keilim and Penimim omedis ach ba'achim zer anpin. So this means like this: the rochel The rochel that we're talking about with the interior Keilim, Omedes Ach Ba'ach, if Zer Anpin, she remains back to back with Zer Anpin, V'lechein Korach Hazibah de Mincha Ach Ba'ach. Now, I hope that helped, but it didn't help me that much. So let's go on and see a little bit more. And the Leshem is a Talmud of the Talmud of the Talmud of the Talmud of the Gaon. These people are very, very hidden. The way that he says it, like the Rashash. He's going to see this later. Bisham Kosev Arav is Elishama. So the whether you're looking at all three different basic davening. All of them have the concept to them of creating a Yichud. But there's a difference between them. Zivug de Shachris hu pane bepane, because the zivug that takes place in the morning is called the Yichud pane bepane, because it's a Yichud of the Penimius of the Partsufim. That's an interesting idea that we have to understand that the Partsufim have a Penimius and Emsoy, and they have a Chitzonius. So this is a category that's not so easy to fathom, but that's what the Rav says. Of a mincha ba'arbes heim besod ach ba'ach, but panim b'panim is only in the morning, and the other is in the ach ba'ach. V'sham mitzayin the lashon, so the lashon comes over and he points out this. Ayin l'kamon. V'sham kosev Rav shebashachris heim b'kelim b'benimim, and then the Rav explains that these are kelim b'benimim. Of a mincha heim b'kelim emsoim, and the mincha they're middle kelim, and understand the partsufim as they match. They have once again, they have an inside, a middle, and an outside. Uva arves heim b'kelim kitzoni. Avukulam heim zivug the Yaakov Rachel, but they all refer to the Yichud of Yaakov Rachel, which I said is from a partsufim, which are lower than Zer Anpin and his Nukva and Malchus, but in fact they're from the Chaza of Zer Anpin Ulamata. They're the lower section, and they're partsufim that exist in the front to back of Zer Anpin, like that. So you see from here that the Leshen put them all together. Shemasha Kosevetz Lena that we have over here, Shebemincha hu zivug ach ba'ach. So this is the phrasing of the Rav. The Rav says in Mincha it's a yichud ach ba'ach. Hakavana kevan shehem bekelim emsi. And the kavana is like this. That since there are with the Keilim that are in the middle Keilim, below the Keilim of Benimim, and not the Kenei Benilim, this is also the way the Sada learn it. Rotza Lomer, Hanuk de Kad Shaus, He Ach Ba'ach B'kol Orechzah. So the Nuk of the 24 hours is the concept of Ach Ba'ach B'kol Orechzah. Now let me point out that this is the second time over here that he used the concept of Kad Shaus. I heard Rabbi Memram say this concept over before. It's a different counting system, and I don't really know too much about it. We didn't learn that much about it. So we're on a discovery course, and let's go on and let's see what else we have to say. So he says, but the Tefillas Mincha, let me go back to this place right here. He said, but the Tefillas Mincha, Hazivug the Zer Anpin Benok Huba Bechinas Ach Ba'ach. And he says, what's the definition? This is what the Tiv brings. A Pirusha Sharachol Omedes Ach Ba'achim Zer Anpin, that she has her back to him. Amna Bezivug Hu Leah im Yisroel. But there's also the Yichud, you could say like this, is this the Yichud that takes place between Leah, which is the parts of above Rachel, from the Chaz of Lamala, Hu Leah im Yisroel B'panim B'panim, that's those two actually have a Panim B'panim, but they're not the same Yichud. So this is also over there. So let's look a little bit more here and try to go on. That was a little difficult part. So he says now that Tiv writes like this. Harav mevoyer hatam lama b'tefillas mincha hazivad dizer anpin benok heba b'chinas ach ba'ach. So why is it that they're not facing each other? Or why is it the most significant part, which is the penimius? Why is it not panim b'panim? The Hari Zaman Tefillas Mincha Od Yom, because it's still daytime. Balama Mishtana Chaziva Dezav V'Nuk B'Tefillas Mincha. Why should it be different? The Yichud that they take at the Tefillas Mincha. So he explains like this. Now, once again, we see the word Kadshaus. So he says, the day and night represent 24 hours. And the 24 hours are divided into 4 different sections. So it comes out like this. Every time you have a period, so in other words, divide 24 by 4, you get 6. Nimsa shebekol sheish shaus. Every time the passage of 6 hours, mishtana on hagad malamala kabayach. He says changes the way that the upper worlds feed our world, as if to say, v'heim an haga acheres the gamri. And so once the 6 hours is up, it's a completely different way in which the worlds work. Now let's see if we can get more information. So since in the morning, which is the first half of the day hours, and that's what we call the aspect of face to face. But the tefillas of mincha, which is after midday, that's noon, or what we call chatzos hayom, and this is the second half of the day, but it's a different section altogether. Because what happens here now is that there's an arousal of Gevurah. It's called the Gevuras Yitzchak. Doesn't mean that Yitzchak is Lashon Kedusha, but it's at the same time Gevurah. So therefore, since that's what's happening, it has to be in a lower level because of that is, and he's saying it's the Partsufim, and it's the Keilim Emsaim of the Partsuf. Now that whole idea of the Keilim Emsaim, I'm not sure that I want to go into an explanation of it because I really don't understand it and I'm learning along. So he said, Achrei Chetzei Yom, Mis'orach Adin v'Chagavura. Then there's arousal of Din and Gevura. Shehu be'bechin shel Yitzchak, which is the concept of Yitzchak. V'lechein Daika Yitzchak Tikun Tefillas Mincha. So therefore it is specifically Yitzchak who has developed and established, that's a word, Tefillas Mincha, because that's Tefillas Mincha is the Tefillah of Yitzchak, which is the Tefillah of Din. Sha'az hu zaman shal shlitas b'chinah. So this is when he is in charge. We're going to stop here today, and for the next time, Mitzvah Shem, we'll learn the next piece. Kol tov.